I'm Councillor Premier with co-host Councillor Andrew Wood on Relax Radio. So we're in our final segment of
Hi, Peru, I can't hear you anymore.
Today's show. So we're going to talk about testimony to Parliament.
Sorry, Peru, I can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you for a while, Peru.
Yes. Sorry, it's just the interference bandwidth, but fire away. Do you want to go into your take on Dominic Cummings' testimony?
Yeah, so I didn't plan to do it. I actually wanted not to listen in, but then I saw some of the comments on social media and thought, well, I should try and listen to it. And I ended up spending all 7 hours in the end watching it, or listening to it at least. And I thought it was really sort of interesting, both as a commentary about the current government, but also about how government itself kind of works more generally. And I think part of the problem is a lot of the commentary, on the day from people listening, were people kind of just picking bits and pieces. And because Dominic Cummings is a hate figure for many people, including within the Conservative Party, I think people kind of spun their own interpretations of what he was saying. And I think actually what he was saying was a lot more interesting than some of the stuff that's kind of been reported. And I think, and I should also say, as Peru said earlier, I am a fan to some extent of Dominic Cummings. He applied he basically advertised a few years ago some jobs at number 10 Downing Street for like weirdos and scientists and all those kind of things. And actually I applied for one of those jobs as in the weirdo category because of, just thought it might, but I never got a response, unfortunately. So I wasn't obviously weird enough for him.
He's an interesting figure in British politics because he didn't come through the conventional routes into, say, Westminster politics, which is sort of like Cambridge, Oxford. Then you get a job as a special advisor, and eventually you end up with a safe seat with your respective party, and then you climb the greasy pole eventually into a minister or senior ministerial position, or through the advisor route going to 10 Downing Street. He's always been on the fringe of British politics, and he basically spotted the issues around Brexit. He ran the right campaign. He won the campaign. There's a really good Channel 4 drama on it. And then he came in with some interesting ideas about shaking up the political establishment. He always saw himself as an outsider, with a bit sort of like Trumpian kind of ish. I wouldn't say Trumpian, but I was a bit like the arguments that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump made, that basically politics been taken over by special interests. We need to shake it up, have some new ideas. And he did come up with some new ideas about looking at stats, getting people to look at stats and have much more fact-based approach to politics. But then he got shot down, sort of ish. I think he's not an easy guy to work with. But I think that's what it is. I think people in politics are so used to a certain way of working. They're not, which is like the lowest common denominator. People don't want to ruffle feathers. I was always surprised in the town hall how people never air their opinions, kind of in certain meetings. They always sort of like nod away, and then afterwards they go, "Oh, this is a terrible idea," but no one talks about it. But Dominic Cummings was a guy who basically said it how it is, and no matter how upset you were. But do you see more of it? More Dominic Cummings coming through, Andrew, in this sort of like post-truth, post-Brexit, kind of post-COVID kind of political world that we have?
So I think where I agree with Dominic Cummings, he's very critical of the UK state and how government works. And as a reminder, he did work at the Department of Education under Michael Gove for a couple of years, and they were a very effective team in terms of delivering things like free. Whether you like or agree with free schools, they made a lot of change very quickly within the Department of Education. And where I agree with him is the criticism of how kind of government works. And what he was basically talking about is basically the British government and the British state failed when it came to COVID, because it was just a complete mess. And he also made some interesting comments about political parties. And one of these kind of points is that in a normal political system that's well run, is that he should never have been in the position that he was actually in. And a prime minister, shouldn't have been the prime minister either. And I think, and there was a lot of kind of focus on the personalities and Hancock and all the rest of it. But for me, that was more interesting was actually how do you make government work? And I think data, which he thinks is particularly important, because, I'm an accountant by background. So my experience and work is basically people coming up with these bright ideas and so saying it's going to work, but the numbers don't support them, or the numbers support them. And I think a lot of the time is we kind of tell stories without any backup. And I think what Dominic Cummings was trying to do via the data work is that, yes, you can tell a story, but you need the numbers behind it to prove that what you're saying is actually true. And that's where a lot of the arguments came over COVID, was an over-interpretation of the data, or not having data in the early days and having to make these punts as to actually what to do. But I think the last point I'll make on this section is he didn't really talk about sort of 2019. This is all because of the committee. It was all about COVID. So he's really talking about what happened in 2020. But I think he was a much more powerful figure in 2019 before the election. And he kind of helped create that system of post-truth and, kicking out other members of the Conservative Party, people like Rory Stewart and David Gauke, in order to kind of win the 2019 election, and basically, making these short circuits to achieve that. So he helped create the system, which then meant that then in 2020, when COVID struck, we failed in many ways, with the exception of vaccines. I mean, that's been the one success. But in 2020, I think the British state, did fail, and he is partially responsible for that. But he wasn't very clear. I mean, he took lots of, he said he was at fault in 2020, but I think he should have been clearer about how the system came about in the first step, and how he created that system in 2019 onwards.
I think there's a lack of checks and balances in terms of the British political system. I've had experience in the Labour Party looking with the previous leader of the opposition, and how easy it is to get into certain circles and have influence, and people who are not even qualified, just talking, taking really important strategic positions without the technical skills. And I think that's one of the things we lack in British political culture, is that respect for technical skills kind of ish. Everybody thinks that if you've got an art degree, you could do anything, but you need the technical skills. And I was shocked at the lack of technical skills that are there in Westminster politics. And it's different from what other, like there was this article by The Economist where they looked at the Chinese leadership, where they're all like engineers. They all got like scientific technical skills, and then they go into government and they bring that kind of like technical background with them. And they were making comparison between the UK political establishment, and that's why they were making an argument that regardless of what you agree or disagree about the Chinese government's political stance, they have this kind of long view of just pushing through changes, necessary changes. But also in Europe as well, someone made this example, like in the Netherlands, whenever they have an issue, they form a group of academic experts to look into the issue, and then they'll come back into parliament. But there's a political consensus that you need these technical skills to actually look into an issue and to have solutions. I guess we need experts. I think Michael Gove was wrong when he said people had enough of experts. I think what he meant, I think what people are crying for is politicians who've got technical skills. We kind of like see that in Tower Hamlets as well. I know residents tell me they have that perception of Tower Hamlets as well. Where do you see this? Are we going to have more technical skills in politics, or is it going to go the opposite direction, Andrew? What's your view?
Well, I think, the key thing is how do we recruit our leaders, members of parliament, and I can't speak about Labour, but in terms of the Conservative Party, I mean, they do have a sort of process for kind of, weeding out people and sort of putting people on a short list. I've never been on it because I did try and I got rejected twice. But my understanding of the process, it's very much based on presentational skills. So a lot of what they do is about you standing up in front of a group of people and making a presentation or a mock TV interview. And therefore, generally speaking, most, and this is not true of all of them, but most Conservative MPs are kind of okay at presenting, but that's the only criteria under which they're selected, plus of course loyalty and all of the rest of it, and weeding out certain other types of people. So it is very presentational focused, and it's only by accident therefore that we get some good MPs coming through the system. And it was very interesting listening to the questions from MPs. There were some very poor questions from Conservative MPs, and there were some very good questions from Conservative MPs. And it was same was true on the Labour and SNP side as well. Some MPs were kind of asking, purely party political stuff about personalities, and some of them were asking kind of like the deep, long-term questions, because the whole point of the committee was about how do we learn the lessons from what went wrong with COVID. So I thought that was very interesting, just listening to the questions from MPs. And I think, both main parties need to have a think about how they recruit MPs and the kind of people that they recruit and the skills that they should have. And I think it's up to both main political parties to try and improve it, because it's within their gift to do so.
I remember having sort of like similar conversation with Ken Livingstone before he said silly things kind of ish ages ago. And he made this point that he found he always wrote his own policies, sort of, and he was really proud, and he showed me his sort of like manifesto. But what he said was that we have this culture. He picked up what you said, where being a politician is just delivering a brief, but you have someone making the brief for you, and politicians never questioned the assumptions behind it, and it allows for, say, lobbying groups or special interest groups to get into an MP's office and basically get them to say things that they don't really understand what they're talking about, but because of the way they present it, they seem to know what they're doing. And whereas he made this point that real politics is about the details, questioning the experts, understanding it, and then implementing it. And he was quite proud of that, but he didn't have any confidence in the Westminster elite, who he just thought were just, I think, a bunch of failed actors. I think that's what his comments was. But we're on this note, failed actors. How many failed actors do we have in Tower Hamlets politics? Pop quiz, kind of ish. Let us know, guys. So on this note, we're going to come to the end of our show. Andrew, any final words to our listeners before we sign off?
No, just keep your eyes open on social media for that knife crime document we were talking about, and just have a think over the next couple of days about what you would put in it, and then just feed back to us your thoughts.
Cool. So we're at the end of our show. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening in. I just want to say thank you to Zach as well. He just moved away. He had to go somewhere, but I just want to thank him for coming onto our show, and enjoy the bank holiday weekend. So I'm Councillor Perivia, co-host Councillor Andrew Wood. Thank you for watching the Politics Show, and goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.